First of all, marking the International Women's Day 2022, let me bring greetings to all the women of the world. And a special shout out to those women who have faced the brunt of patriarchy, violence, brutal violence, and are reminded of that and probably given up any hope of justice. I want to give a shout out to all those women to say, you are not forgotten, and that your struggles, your pain is remembered and lifted up, and we will use that to once again affirm our pledge, renew our pledge to stand for justice and work together for justice. Thank you very much. I would like to choose my visit to Kandhamal in Orissa, just a few months after the, I won't call it genocide, but violence targeting the Christian community in the state of Orissa in Kandhamal. I think the moment we talk about the state of Orissa, what comes to our minds is the burning of Graham Staines with his two sons who were there in the car. And because of this hatred of the religion, the faith, where Graham Staines and his wife Gladys Staines, they were working with the leprosy affected in India, and to find that, to name those acts of compassion as ways of attempting to convert people, change the pattern of is not innocent one. So I would like to portray through the lens of the experience of Sister Meena, who was gang raped during that Kandhamal violence, as the lens for us to look at how Christians, especially the women, the Dalits and the tribals, their bodies are targeted as the site of violence, and how the bodies turn into battlefields where the Hindutva, the ideology of Hindutva reinforces, wants to control and have abusive, absolute control over the body of a Dalit, a woman, a Christian. And one other point to start with is, we find that this whole religion and faith of Christianity gets so feminized in the sense that the whole religion and faith can be reduced and dismissed as one body that can be targeted for violence and then dismissed as in nothing. What is helpful for us is to look at or map the violence, the pattern of violence that takes place against the Dalits, the Christians, and the tribals. When we look at the commonalities and identify the patterns of violence, I see body as the site of violence. Number one. Two, impunity of the perpetrators of violence, meaning those who you may look at or imagine as those protectors of the Constitution and those whom you can seek or a refuge from, turn around to be either silent or tacit supporters of violence. And very often the state becomes a supporter or a silent, just a silent spectator. And this is something common that we identify as the experience of those who are targeted for violence in any time, any place, but very specifically looking at the Kandhamal situation that happened in August 2008. In February 2002, this rehearsal of the laboratory of Hindutva manufacturing hate was already tried on the bodies of the Muslims. And it was easy to try it out again against the bodies of the Christians in Kandhamal. So it is important to make the connection and link up these patterns of violence that are perpetrated by the Hindutva ideology. Why I stress on Hindutva is to differentiate Hindutva ideology from Hinduism. For example, when Sister Meena and Father Chelan were actually given refuge in a Hindu home by that Hindu person who wanted to protect these two from the mob, she later on says that she would have done it knowing, even though she knew the cost of, taking such a stand. So what was absolutely normal and natural was a good, harmonious relationship between Hindus, Muslims, and Christians, the tribals. But what is invented as the negative other, the dangerous other, the polluting, the threat other is part of the Hindutva ideology. And that is why for us to see the link between Hindutva and patriarchy. Hindutva is not a religion. It is another phase of patriarchy. And for us to see this commonality, the common pattern, is very important. What about those who are not physically present at the site of the violence? Very often, there is an imagined helplessness because there is that silence, that engineered silence, that colluding silence that is generated by the powerful, and in this case, by the Hindutva ideology, and acceptance, consent to that idea that Christians are out to get us. Christians are out to increase their number and convert anyone, especially the women, the Dalits, the tribals. And therefore, as a way of protecting Hinduism, protecting their own majority religion, and under the label of conversion, Christians, their religious sites and symbols were targeted in Kandhamal. For us to see how the site of violence that happened on August 23rd, 2008, when it is narrated by people, for us to realize that even the crucifix kept in the sanctuary was not spared. The cross at the top of the church, not spared. That cross was brought down, and in that place, a flag, and the saffron flag being hoisted. It's just to once again enumerate that power and control can never be yours. I was reminded very much of Exodus chapter 1. I'm speaking from the Bible here, where there is this production of theories, myths, to say, imagine what would happen if these people and then turn around and hurt us. So we have to protect ourselves and therefore create a logic to initiate persecution, initiate violence is a very common pattern. And once we read this as a common sign, as a familiar sign, it is important for us to look for reasons. Why is it that a female body, a Dalit body, a tribal body is identified as a threat? And this is where, once again, we see the commonality of experiences between the African American struggle for identity, struggle for justice, the voices for equality and equity that scream for justice and scream for democracy. The basic point is this: democracy and diversity are a threat to patriarchy. And if we have to look at the violence that is perpetrated against these bodies, especially the Christian Dalit bodies, rather than taking that as the way to bear in silence, analyze, and understand the situation, we turn that into a point of coming together and realize that these boundaries are intentionally drawn between us, between religions, between women and men, to say that we may be enemies, to create that mistrust against one another. So for us to come together as bodies, as everybody, and be against patriarchy and Hindutva that targets our bodies, and keep that as a sign of embodied justice as our vision and hope. Thank you.